Good morning, this is John Miller. It is Saturday, July 4th, and I'm doing a quick run through on how to create a CLi calculation and how to use the Golf CLi site. And I've actually updated the site recently to allow people to create their own accounts and manage their CLi calculations better. As you'll see right now, I'm on the home page of golfcli.com, and you can see that by looking at this URL up at the top of the screen. So I've created a demo account to kind of show you how I can add CLi calculations and how I can interpret those calculations. So what I'm going to do over here is actually log into my demo account and click login here. And this is going to take me to the main page of my account. So you'll see I'm actually in my account section, and I have the subsections main, CLi calculations, purchase credits, and my profile. And over here on the top right, it shows that I'm logged in as Joe Demo, and my login ID is JDemo. I'm on the main page of my account, and you'll see that I have the credit balance, and I have 50 credits in my account, and you need to have credits to be able to run your custom CLi calculations, and each CLi calculation requires 2 credits at this time, and each credit costs $1. So you'll see that I have 50 credits in my account, which means I can actually create 25 credits, or sorry, 25 calculations. And if I do need to purchase more credits, I can just click on this button here or on the top part of this page, which is the left submenu, and I can actually purchase credits at any time. You'll see that this is the newly created account, so I have no calculations in this account, so it shows total calculations 0, and then list the most recent calculations will be that there's none, since I have not created a calculation yet. And I can page down here a little bit, and I can actually see what tournaments are in the system that are happening this week, and that's what current tournaments means. I can see what tournaments are coming next week, and that's what the tournaments coming soon section is down here. And then I can go down some more and also see tournaments that have recently been played, and we'll talk about that in a little bit in terms of how I can look at past CLi calculations that I have created in my account. But at this time I don't have any, so we're going to go ahead and create some. Alright, so let's see. What I'm going to go do is actually we're going to run a calculation. Let's see. I'm just going to create a CLi calculation from scratch. So I click on create a CLi calculation, and this will take me to the Golf CLi calculation form. It shows that I have 50 credits, so I'm good to go, and if I create this one, I'll actually be using 2 of my calculations. Sorry, 2 of my credits. Alright, so I'm going to name this configuration. Let's do the US Open. Well, yeah, let's do the US Open and see how the calculation resulted. Since the US Open happened 2 weeks ago, I'm going to call this US Open CLi calculation 1. Let's do this here. Okay. Then I'm going to come down to tournament. I'm going to type in US Open. I'm going to wait a little bit, and it's going to bring me my options of which US Opens I can select in the system. So you'll see the system actually has US Open championships up until 2013, but I want to actually look at the US Open that was just played, which was on June 18th this year, 2009. So I select that. Then I'm going down to the meat of the form, which allows me to change the configurations settings based upon what I think is most important in this tournament's results. So what the CLi does, which CLi stands for Confidence Level Indicator, CLi actually is a formula that uses multiple figures and weights those figures based upon the user's preferences. So if you think a certain variable needs to be weighed higher, you just change the percentage weight. Okay, so there's three main sections of the CLi calculation. The first one is looking at the number of past tournaments, and that's actually the past instances of this tournament. So this is the US Open, so I can say I want to look back at 5 past instances of this tournament, and that's what this number over here means. And then the second part of it, okay, is the number of days looking back, and this is the number of days leading up to this year's US Open. So the default is 30 days. Then the third section of the formula figures is number of tournaments looking back. And so what happens is you can look back at the number of tournaments leading up to this tournament that the player has played in. So if the player has not played in a tournament in the last 30 days, and you actually had the number of days looking back 30, then you wouldn't see the results. Good example would be Tiger Woods. He doesn't necessarily play every tournament. He skips sometimes 1 to 2 months before he'll play another tournament. And so what the number of days looking back does, it looks at the calendar days. The number of tournaments looking back looks at the number of tournaments the player has played leading up to the tournament you're running the calculation for. And the default is 4 tournaments. So you can look at the most recent 4 tournaments the player has played. Okay, so that's the number in these 3 sections. And here we look at the weights for each one of these numbers. So the scoring average and the earnings average for each section is calculated. So you'll actually have 6 different figures in the formula, and you can weight these different figures. And so what the default is for the number of past tournaments looking back, for the scoring average weight is 20%, and the earnings average weight is 20%. So that means for these figures, that there's 2 figures that relate to the number of past tournaments looking back, scoring average and earnings average. You've actually put a total of 40% of the overall CLi calculation value on the number of past tournaments looking back. Then you look at the number of days looking back, and the default is 10% on the scoring average and 10% on the earnings average. So this means if you compare it to the number of past tournaments looking back, that you're putting less of a weight on the number of days looking back, or the number of days preceding the tournament, as compared to the number of past tournaments of this instance. So you're putting more weight on someone who's played in this tournament versus someone who's playing well leading up to this tournament in terms of calendar days. And then you come down and look at the number of tournaments looking back, and you add the default, which is 20% for each the scoring average weight and the earnings average weight. And so the number of tournaments that the person or the players played leading up to this tournament has a weight of 40%. Now if you look at the 2 sections called number of days looking back and number of tournaments looking back, that's basically trying to look at how the player is playing leading up to the tournament. So if you add the 4 weights here, which would be 10%, 10%, 20%, 20%, the default is showing that you're putting a 60% weight in aggregate on how the player is playing leading up to the tournament, whereas you're putting a 40% weight on how the player has played in this specific tournament in past instances of this tournament. And so we can actually change all these. Now the weight needs to be needs to add up to a total of 100% to make the CLi work properly in terms of the figure that comes out. And then the figure is what is used to rank the players in order to figure out which players have the best chance of playing well. Now again, we need to remember what the purpose is of the CLi calculation. And specifically, the CLi calculation is going to tell us which players have the best chance of playing well. Now in terms of the level of playing well, that all depends on the CLi and how low that CLi is. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and leave the figures in here as default, and I'm going to go ahead and leave the player name format being first name, last name versus last name, first name. And I'm going to go ahead and start this calculation. It takes about 3 to 5 minutes to run the calculations. It's going through some historical numbers. So I push submit, and that's going to go ahead and start the CLi calculation for the US Open. So what the resulting page shows me is that it will show me the summary of the settings I just had on the form and submitted, and it shows me my configuration ID. So if I ever want to go back and look at it, I have the ID as being 140, and then again it shows me the settings that I use for the number of past tournaments looking back, number of days looking back, number of tournaments looking back, and the scoring average and earnings average for each one of these. So I'll actually, and also down here it shows that 2 credits have been debited from my account, so now I only have 48 credits. So it showed that I have used 2 credits to run the CLi calculation. So I can view the calculations in progress, even though most likely they're not going to be finished. And sure enough, I've now looked at I'm on the Golf CLi calculation view page, I should say, and it shows I'm looking at the configuration 140, and it's showing the status is in progress, so it has not finished. So when I look at this, I'm actually going to page down. It shows that it has the players here in the list, and if I come down here, it shows me that the calculation is still in progress, and it's only calculated 22 players in the list so far. So if I refresh this, all right, it should show me that I have more players in the list here again. And sure enough, right now it's down to 48 players. So if I wait a little bit, it will actually show me the results once I get there. So I'm going to let that run, and then I'm going to come back to the main page, and I'm going to show you where you can also watch the status of this. So it's showing me that I have 1 calculation in my account now, and it's in progress. So let's go ahead and create another one here. Alright, now I'm actually on a Saturday, so we actually know that the AT&T National, which is Tiger Woods tournament in Bethesda, Maryland, is going on right now. There's been 2 rounds played, and so I'm actually going to go ahead and run the CLi for this tournament just to see how it's going. Usually you do want to run the CLi before the tournament starts, but in this case I'm just using this as a demo. So I click on Run CLi for this tournament, and so you'll see that the tournament field is already populated, so I don't have to go search for it. Now I will go ahead and name this CLi nickname, or configuration nickname, with a more informative name for myself. And so I'm going to look down and see if I want to change these figures here. I'm going to go ahead and keep these figures the same again as the default. And well, actually, what I'll do is I'll change this just to show you how I can do this. So I actually think that there's more weight on how players have played. There needs to be more weight on how players played for this specific tournament. So I want to change this to 25, and I'll keep this at 25. I want to put this down at 5. I think that number of days looking back, 30 is okay, but I just don't think it's important. I do think that the number of tournaments the players played leading up to this event is important. So that means I'm putting a 50-50 chance on the past instance of this tournament and the days and tournaments leading up to this tournament as 50-50. And I go ahead and push submit. So I'll start this one. And so now I have another CLi calculation going, and you'll see the configuration ID is 141, and again it does show me the summary of this. And I can click here to see if it's actually started or not in terms of the calculation. Sure enough, it's in progress. You can start to come page down. You'll see it's only done 3 players so far in this list. So come back to main, alright, and we'll see that we'll have now 2 CLi calculations in the list. Now, if you look at this, alright, I now have my first one that I started for the US Open as being finished, and the one I just started for the AT&T National as being in progress. So I can actually go through there and look at that and see what it looks like by clicking on the name of the CLi or the view button. So again, it's showing me the summary of my CLi settings, showing that it's finished, and then I can actually come down and look at how the CLi ranked the players. So in this CLi for the US Open, this configuration, it showed that Tiger Woods had the best chance of playing well Jim Furyk the second best, and Tim Clark the third best. So since this player has already, since this tournament's already been finished, all right, I can actually come over here to the very far right and see that I can look at how the player finished in the tournament. So you'll see that Tiger Woods actually finished sixth. So the CLi did a decent forecasting or prediction for this tournament, and it predicted Jim Furyk as coming in playing well in the top two. He actually finished 33rd, Tim Clark 40th, and Steve Tricker 23rd. Now, you want to see that the results over here on the right-hand column be similar to the rankings over here, and also the CLi actual figure. So the actual figure for the CLi for Tiger Woods was 5.7. So what that's saying is that there's a pretty good chance that Tiger will place in the top 6 of the tournament. So you round this number up, and then you round this number up as well. So it's saying here for Jim Furyk, all right, that he has a pretty good chance of placing in the top 7, and Tim Clark the top 8, and so on. So if the CLi figure weren't this low, if they were, let's say Tiger Woods was 50, all right, that means the CLi is not doing a very good job of calculating or predicting who's going to play well. In a lot of cases, that's because the data that drives the formula is very limited, or that there's just so much heterogeneity in the results that the CLi just cannot come up with a trend in terms of predicting which players will play well. So what happens is you don't want to see a lot of miscuts, and that's what this MC is here. So in the top half of the CLi, you don't want to see the MC, which means miscut, in there. So it didn't do very good on predicting David Toms for the U.S. Open. Now he was playing well coming in the tournament, so he missed the cut by ones, and he was playing well going into it, but he made I believe it was a triple bogey or quadruple bogey on one of the par 3s at Bethpage Black, and that just shot him over the cut line there. But I mean, many people thought he'd play well, but he missed the cut, and that's golf for you. So if the CLi is doing well in its predictions, you should see very little miscuts in the top part of the list, and when you page down to the list, bottom half of the list, you should see more miscuts, which is the case here, in terms of the overall predictions. So, it gets the two extremes. The question is, how does the CLi do in the middle part of the field there? Now, looking at this here, the columns in between the player name, CLi rank, and the rounds, you're actually looking at the figures that the CLi uses. So what you have here for scoring averages, all right, is the scoring average for Tiger Woods for the past 5 instances of this tournament, all right, and then scoring average 2, all right, is going to be the scoring average for Tiger Woods for the 30 days leading up to the U.S. Open, and then scoring average 3, all right, is what Tiger Woods has played in the last 4 tournaments he's played in leading up to this tournament. So that's what the scoring average figures show here. And the same thing for the earnings averages, but rather than using scoring averages, you use earnings. And earnings are important because it shows the importance of the tournament. So if the player had played in a nationwide tournament leading up to the U.S. Open, you'd actually see, and they would want it still would have showed a lower earnings average. So it puts a weight, in a sense, on the importance of the tournament, because usually tournaments that have higher purses are more difficult and should be considered should have a higher weight on them, and that's what this earnings average in the CLi calculation does here. So if you didn't like what the CLi came up with, all right, in terms of the actual figure here, you could actually sort on the scoring averages. So if I click on SA1, it's going to show me the scoring averages for the players, and who has the lowest scoring average leading up to, or not leading up to, sorry, but scoring average for the U.S. Open for the last 5 instances of it. Now, it's kind of a bug there that you see for 000. That means those players have not played in the U.S. Open. So there's 52 players in this field that have not played in the U.S. Open the last 5 years. So if I come down to number 53, then it starts to show me the scoring averages for people that actually have played, and that's Tiger Woods has the lowest scoring average for the U.S. Open last 5 years at 71.83, and then you have Heath Slocum, which that's a surprise for many, and then you have Phil Mickelson, Mediate, Weir, and Husin, Ogilvy, Furyk in terms of the scoring averages. And so then I come back up here, and let's say I want to see the scoring average for the last 3 days, who has the lowest scoring average for the last 30 days. And again, it's going to show me the excuse me, it's going to show me the zeros first, which means that it's going to be the players that haven't played in the last 30 days. Sorry. So I come down here, I'm looking at this middle column here for scoring average, and it shows me that Rory Sabatini has the lowest scoring average over the last 30 days, and then Clinton Jensen and Tim Clark and Brian Gay. So those people are playing pretty well in the last 30 days. And then go and sort on the scoring average number 3 here, which is the last 4 tournaments the player has played leading up to the U.S. Open. Okay, and so I come down here, and then most players have played in a tournament played in a tournament looking back, whereas we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 players, okay, that have not played in a tournament at all in the system, and most likely those are all amateurs, and so the data didn't capture that because it didn't capture all the amateur tournaments. It mainly captures professional tournaments. So you'll see that you have Charlie Beljan has the lowest scoring average in the last 4 tournaments he's played in, and then Clinton Jensen, Justin Leonard, and Michael Sims. So this is a good point of why you'd want to look at the earnings average. Charlie Beljan plays one of the mini tours around, and he has a low scoring average. But what happens is they've been on many tour events versus on USPGA tour events or European PGA tour events. And so the earnings is important to look at here. So he's only earned, all right, close to the last. Let's see, that'd be the last 30 days. He's earned $6,000, even though he's played well. So you want to look at the earnings average there, and so you can do the same thing for the earnings averages if you want to, and you also sort by player name here. So I'll do that, and it's actually should be by last name, first name here. So let me look down here, and sure enough, okay, it's going by last name, and I can sort by those players if I wanted to find that. So that's rather cool. So, but again, let's look at what this is telling us. But the CLI is basically saying that Tiger Woods, Jim Furyk, Tim Clark, and so on have the best chance of playing well. And if you take the CLI literally, it basically says that Tiger Woods has a very good chance of placing in the top 6, Jim Furyk in the top 7, Tim Clark in the top 8 if you round up here. So that's basically the calculation for you. So let's go back here and go to the main page for my account, and I'm going to look at see if my AT&T National CLI calculation has finished, and sure enough it has. So I'm looking at that over here. So I'll click on that, and let's see how the CLI turned out. So again, I'm looking at the AT&T National CLI configuration, and I changed some of the figures here, all right, from the setting versus the default. And right now we're looking at round 2, so we're halfway through the tournament, and the CLI predicted Anthony Kim, Tiger Woods, Jim Furyk in playing well in the top 3 players in the CLI. If you look at this right now, Anthony Kim is ranked 3rd after 2 rounds. Tiger Woods is leading the tournament after 2 rounds. Jim Furyk is in the top 4. So in this case, the CLI is doing a pretty good job in predicting who will play well at the AT&T National. Now there's 2 more rounds to go, so that can totally change, but that's just interesting to see that going forward. And basically you'd hope to see more missed cuts towards the end of the list versus towards the beginning, and you do for the most part here. So this would be an oddball here in terms of Danny Lee playing well. He's at 8th, but the CLI picked him basically to finish around 105th. Now, one of the things is he just turned pro and he's from New Zealand, so there's not much data out there to configure or to run on him to see if he'd play well. And you can see that, I mean, there's not any instances of him playing this tournament, and he's played a little bit over the last 30 days and last 4 tournaments, and so he's there. And again, he just recently turned pro. So if I go back to the main page of my account, I can then look at I have 46 credits left. I've run 2 calculations, 2 of them are finished. And I look down here and I can actually now see that there's a current tournaments section, and I have a CLi underneath and associated with AT&T National. And so if I have I'll run another CLi for the AT&T. Let's say I want to kind of see if my configurations were correct for the AT&T National. So this is number 2 here. And if you remember, alright, I changed these figures to 25 and 25, 5 and 5. And let's go back and see if I got the default here. Alright. Let's say I really don't think that the past instances of this tournament are correct. And that could be the case here because it's moved to congressional the last year, I believe, and so there was times when it was played at a different venue. So I'll lower the percentage for these 2, and I will actually increase leading up to the tournament the weights. So let's double check, and I got 100. Okay, I want to make sure the total weight of these 6 fielder is 100%. So let's run this one here. Boom. Okay. Alrighty, so that's going. So I'm going to run a third one for the AT&T as well. Okay, so I come back here and I can actually, it shows that I have 1 in progress for the AT&T National. I have 1 finished, and then I'm actually going to run a third one. Okay, and this is where I'm going to change again the configuration. Okay, and so what I'm going to do now, alright, is say, I really want to put less weight on the scoring. I really want to look at the earnings. That's important for me. So I'm going to put 0 here, and I'm going to put 40 here, and I'm going to actually only go back 3. Since it started last year, I'm only go back 1. It's going to be different here, okay? And then I'm going to go back 60 days, and again I'm going to only do earnings here. I'm going to go back 8 tournaments. Alright, 0. Alright, I'm going to go put this at 40 here. So no scoring. I don't care about the scoring weights. I only want to look at the earning weights. Make sure I'm at total weights of 100, and push submit. Okay, so that's going to give me a third CLi calculation that I can look at for this tournament. So I can go back to the main page again and look at the configurations progress, and you'll see that the one I did, the second one is finished, the third one is now in progress. And I can also go to the main CLi list calculations, see the status of the calculations. So the main page for my account just shows the recent CLi calculations and the calculations for the current week's tournament, the tournaments coming soon, and then the last week's tournaments. Whereas if I wanted to search all my calculations, I can come to the my account CLi calculations page. So boom. Let's go back to the main page here, and I can now go and look and see. I can actually compare the CLi calculations. Now you'll see that the third calculation that I did for the AT&T National is still in progress, so it's not finished yet. Let's go and see how many players it's finished so far. Still in progress. Alright, so it's still the ways to go. I think there's 120 odd players in the field, and it's only done 41. Okay. So yep, total calculations still 4, current calculations that are finished 3, 1 in progress is 1. So and just go back. And now let's say I wanted to, look at a tournament that's coming soon. So I'll come over here and look at the tournaments coming soon section, and I look at the players in field, and I want to see if the field has been entered for the tournament. And in this case, at John Deere, the field has been entered. For the Barclays Scottish Open, it has been entered. So I'm going to run CLi calculations for both the John Deere and the Barclays Scottish Open. Alright, so I click on Run CLi for the John Deere. Alright. Okay, and I'm going to keep the default for right now. Push Submit. Alright, I'm going to go back to the main page here, and I will then go back down to the Barclays. I want to put the Barclays here, run that. Okay, and this one I'm going to change a little bit. Alright, I'm going to put 25 here, 25 and scoring and earnings averages, and I'm going to make this lower here for the numbers of days looking back, basically leading up to the tournament. Push Submit. Okay, so I have a couple of them going. I'm down to 38 credits now on my account down here. Alright. Okay, so you'll see I have 6 total calculations in my account. I have 3 that are finished, and then actually 3 that are in progress. So it's still going and churning away. So I can see in the list the most recent